Toby, welcome to the show.
JG, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Of course, man. It's good to see you again, and it's you're in a different place now than last time. Well, last time I guess I saw your face. You were at Sac City or Sac State. I'm sorry, and we were out in LA at Doug's place, and
Yep.
it's so great getting to meet you, man. And I'm excited to get to pick your brain today and to share your content and what you guys are doing at the University of Arizona. With the world. But first, I'm really curious because I've never really been a part of an entire staff rollover. And so whenever Jay Johnson left for LSU and you and Chip got the job and brought all of you guys in, there was a lot of players that stayed, some left. And so I'm really curious on what that looked like because you have some of the same players that were still there. College World Series, great experience. And then you guys come in and it's like you didn't recruit them. You probably knew some of them. Maybe you got the chance to bring some guys in late, but it's a really interesting dynamic. And so I would love to hear just some different things that you did to really get to know them, to earn their trust, and to start to really evaluate who your guys are and things like that.
Yeah, that's it's kind of a layered question, right?
Sure. Yeah.
There's a lot of elements to it because I think oftentimes when there's a whole staff change, it's because there wasn't success. So the different parts of that and the different elements of that were weird because one, from a coaching aspect, all four of us had never coached together before. Outside of I think Trip and Chip had coached Team USA together in like 95 or something like that. So there's that element, right, of us kind of getting to know each other and how we coach and how we go about our business on a day-to-day basis. And then there's the player element, where you take a team that just went to Omaha and, not all the pieces are there, but they know how to win. So there's a culture that's in place that, it's I think when you come in with a new staff, there's got to be some element of change, but you also understand that it's like, if you're taking over Google, you don't want to just change the name, right? Like there's definitely elements there that you want to keep. And especially being the hitting coach, like I had a lot of conversations with guys. Hey, what do you guys like to do on a daily basis? What are some elements to your practice plan and to your daily routines that allowed you guys to have success, right? This is the best offense in the country a year ago. So they were doing something right. And like I said, there was, I think 5 or 6 guys who aren't here anymore, but there's still a lot of guys who are big time contributors to that lineup, and they know how to win. So I think it was, getting to know them. And I think for some of those guys on the player side, it was fun because, it's a fresh start for everybody. And, coming from, I'd been at Sac State for 3 years, and with COVID, a lot of guys got a year back. So there's, we had 3 years of a really, really strong core group there. And now I'm trying to get to know, all these 40 new guys. And so there were some challenges in there, but it was a lot of fun. And I think this group is really, really close for sure.
I love it. I love hearing that. And it not that I do think that it takes a lot to be able to embrace that because, you want to put your spin on it. And I think it speaks to your humility and Chip and the staff's humility to recognize that and go, hey, like these guys were really good this year. Let's try and replicate the things that they did successful with our own spin on it. And I love hearing that. That's great.
Yeah. I say all the time, like, it's like Bobby Flay made something and a chef comes in and try it. Like, I'm just going to add a little salt and pepper. Like, I'm not going to remake the dish, right? Like,
I love it.
You're not reinventing the wheel, I think. And a part of me too is like, I think, from an outsider looking in, like I have so much respect for Jay and Mark Wanaka and what they were able to do, especially just, specifically on the offensive side and without knowing exactly what they do. And, then you find out more and more and you learn more and more about what they do. And, there's certain things to it, right? Like you understand why they had success because there's elements to hitting that I believe in. I think they share those same beliefs. And then it also kind of takes you a step back and it's like, there's no real like magic to this, right? Like hitting is hitting. Like, I think, when you look at someone from afar, you think that there's going to be like this secret sauce that they use. And there was definitely certain things that I've learned in terms of like, making quality swing decisions. And they're after doubles and walks, right? Which who isn't?
Mm-hmm.
But I think they understood how to teach it, and they hit a lot. And I think in especially in college, because you're so limited in time. What you make important is going to be important to your team. So you just have to be careful, like what you make important, because what that's going to resonate through your whole roster. And so if you don't make the right things important, especially to what your roster is, I think that sets you up for failure, right? And so, like how they recruited and how they did everything resonated to like they wanted guys with quality who would make quality swing decisions, and especially at our yard here, it's not the hardest place to hit doubles. It's a huge yard, and there's hits everywhere, and I just think that being a younger hitting coach, it was like, okay, there's not a secret sauce. Like, work really hard to get to know these guys and put them in good positions and let them be athletes.
Oh, really, really good. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about, just some different things that you guys are doing. And it sounds to me like, with the things that you agree on with Jay, and then you guys are putting your own spin on it, is really just simplifying a lot of things. And, I couldn't agree more. And that's not saying that we want them to get the foot down early, swing down, simple type stuff, right? Or, whatever it may be, but it's just like, how do we help them to make better decisions? Well, one of the things is to cut out some of the noise that's going on in their brains, and for them to actually focus on being on time and seeing the ball. And so I'd love to hear, like, let's talk about some of the different things that you guys are doing this fall to help with, pitch decisions is a big deal. You control the zone on either side of the ball. You're going to be pretty good. And so tell us a little bit about that. We'll get into some Chip Hale, Two Strike Tuesday Twitter account and all of that stuff. But tell us a little bit about, what did you start with layering in, and let's rewind back about a month or two and to the first part of the fall, and tell us about what you're doing.
Yeah, and so we'll touch more on Two Strike Tuesdays. That's a staple for us. But I also think that's the foundation of, like with today's game, like people are okay with a strikeout more than they ever have been. And I'm not saying I'm like, no, don't strike out. Like everyone's going to strike out, and I get that. But I think there's a foundational piece to like being really good with two strikes. Like I don't care who you are, half your at-bats are going to be with two strikes. That's just an absolute fact. Like numbers say that 50% of at-bats go to two strikes. So why not practice it and be really good at it? So the reason I think that's a really good like base foundation and element to our offense is the better you are with two strikes, like the better you can be with less than two strikes, right? Like I think oftentimes as hitters, like we're not good early in the count because we're worried about getting to two strikes. So we're like so pressed to move the ball forward with less than two strikes that you miss two quality pitches to hit, and now you're like, oh, shoot, I'm 0-2. And then you're a bad hitter, right? Like, well, everyone's a bad hitter 0-2. No one's a good hitter 0-2. That's just numbers tell us that. So if you can lay that foundation of having a lot of confidence with two strikes, then I think it makes you a way better hitter 0-0. And like, then you start talking about mindset. Like we say, and Howie Kendrick said this, and I say it to our guys now, like it's better to be 0-1 than 0-1.
I love that. I say that all the time.
Right? So it's like it's okay, but I think you have to learn how to be really good with two strikes to be really good before that. And I think you get to be more selective and picky if you have confidence with two strikes, right? Like you can look to do damage early in the count. But in terms of like drills and things like that, one, we just try to make it really hard on a fairly regular basis. Two, we'll do some drills like I have a bucket of balls. They call it the mixed bucket. So there's like those Wilson soft compression balls that they use in T-ball mixed with regular baseballs. So we'll do breaking balls or fastballs off of that, and the movement will be different. And so you're making swing decisions, right? And I think just the more often you can just force the brain to make a decision while they're hitting, the better you're going to be. We'll use balls that have different colors on them, and they have to say the colors. So we'll start off like take one, hit one. So you take it and say the color, and then you hit it and try to say the color. we'll put a screen out in front of a tee and off a machine, and we'll go breaking ball. They have to hit it above the line or take it below the line. Fastballs will do a horizontal line, and you got to hit the pitch away or take the pitch in. The more often I think you can just make the mind and body work together, right? Because that's what once I think you can practice that, then they can work together. Because I think the best time, when you just take BP, you're not really thinking about a lot of stuff, and usually BP is pretty good, right? So the more you can kind of challenge the brain to make quality decisions, then hopefully when you get into a game, there's not as much of a thought process, and it just becomes natural and athletic.
No, I love that. And, we were talking off the mic earlier just about the trends that we grew up with. So we didn't grow up with a lot of any data. Like I don't remember having any sort of data whenever I was growing up. And maybe in like 2014, we had like the ZEP sensor, which, but we didn't grow up with that stuff. So once that stuff started to become popularized, then it was like, okay, now this is almost all that these players are doing now. And just like with hitting in general, it's never an all size or one size fits all cookie cutter approach of, hey, like the data may all say that this is the average of what people do, but you also could have outliers that are bringing that average back together, and none of them actually do that. But you have like two separate sides of, hey, this guy does this guy does this, and then the average is this, but no guy does that. So just understanding with that. So I think kids need help with that stuff, but I also we talked about helping them with the vision side, with the timing side, with the approach side, with the game planning side. Hey, what contact points even for timing. We talked about that earlier too, but it seems like they're getting a lot of the mechanical side, good or bad. You could argue that one way or the other, but now the missing piece has flipped from when we played. I may be a little bit older than you, but when we played, it was all approach game planning because that's all we had. Oh yeah, I look younger. Thanks. I take care of myself over here, So, just kidding. But it's almost flipped now. From we didn't know anything about mechanics, so that's all that we could do to be able to compete. And now it's the opposite side of now we know a lot about mechanics, but that's they're missing the other piece. So I don't know anything you want to rant on that about. That was kind of ranty, so I apologize.
Yeah, no. I think once again that's super loaded, right? Which is there's so many pieces to that.
Yeah.
I think as coaches, I think we're translators. When you watch an interview with someone who doesn't speak English, and they, that's not exactly what they're saying, but you're trying to piece together the important things for the audience, right? So I think we're translators, and what I mean by that is, you have Blast and Rapsodo and Kate, like you have all these things, TrackMan, Yakkertech, all these things, and players have access. At our place, we have in our locker room, we have a video room where guys they can literally come in during an inter squad and watch their last at bat. Like it's crazy.
That's cool.
And so I think there's two ways to go about it. You can run from it or you can embrace it. And I think that's how I've always tried to push that with our guys is like, listen, I don't want you worried about all that stuff. And I think sometimes I'll talk mechanics all day. Like I love the swing and I love hitting. But I think in every aspect of hitting, like you have to be a translator, give them what you think they need, and then kind of hide them from some of it. Right. And
sure.
When we talk about technology, it's all there, but what we've really identified, and I don't know this to be right or wrong, but everyone, chases exit velocity and all. I think that's kind of been like the new kind of, everyone's after exit velocity, right? And I'm not saying it's not important. It for sure is. Like the harder you hit the ball at a certain launch angle, like you have a really good chance to get a hit, right? Like I'm not going to argue that. That's 100% a fact. But how do you create that, right? Like I think you always have to keep going backwards until you find that one thing. And so for us, it's been just swing decision, right? Because and I think that's when you talk about game planning, right? Like you can use the numbers and the data to establish a game plan for each guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, which is weird because, you break down, we show everybody the heat maps into the fall, and it's like, it's always the same, right? Like pitchers get swing and miss at the top and around the edges of the zone.
Sure.
And that's where hitters swing. And
Yeah.
then all the hitters hit the middle of the
Oh yeah.
plate,
Middle.
right? Like it's not a secret.
No, that's a secret sauce right there. You're letting
It's
everybody know.
look for a pitch in the middle of the plate and hit it, like move it
Yeah.
forward. But and how we do that is we have a point system. So we get -1 for taking a strike. You get +1 for taking a ball. You get -2 for end zone swing and miss. You get -2 for chase. So, so what do we make important? Like not swinging and missing in the zone, and not like swinging at a pitch out of the zone. And then you get +1 for in play or foul with 2 strikes. Like
Sure.
it's the things that we make important, and hopefully we're going to be really good at them.
All right. I love it.
But that's, blast is blast and Rapsodo is Rapsodo. You watch videos and guys take a swing, they look back at the TV, and it's like, it's cool. Like you're just taking BP. Like that wasn't an 85-mile-an-hour slider. Like, what are you going to do on that pitch? Because that's what hitting is.
Sure. No, I think, to compound with what you're saying is basically trying to find the layer that the kids need and what's going to motivate them to continue to own their career and their swing. And it's, some guys are motivated by seeing that stuff. Like, well, okay, cool. Like some guys, like I was talking to a kid the other day, I was like, what do you think about in the box? And he said, can I be honest with you? I was like, sure. He can hit a little bit. I was like, sure, of course. He goes, I really try not to think about anything. He said, once I start thinking about stuff, then it just makes me worse. And I was like, well, that's okay. Like we'll try that. And he knows like what he has to do to be successful. And some guys overthink it, and for him, he may underthink it some. But you hit, right?
That's so funny. So I get on our guys all the time because like it's like that's a perfect story. So I'm going to tell you like what I say all the time is it's impossible to think about nothing, right? Like that's not how our mind works. Our mind can't think about anything because that's even when we sleep, we're dreaming, right? Like our mind subconsciously is thinking about something. So when he says like, oh, I don't think about anything, like I tell our guys, like when you consciously are thinking about nothing, like you're actually thinking about something. You're thinking about, I don't want to, like nothing is on your mind because it's actually nothing, right? Like, because if I tell you, and I do this with guys like, hey, JG, think about nothing. And then I say, what are you thinking about? There's probably a lot of things, right? That like when you try to go blank mind, a lot of things happen. But I think and this is just a guess, like I think he's probably really good at when he consciously thinks about nothing, like I'm not going to think about anything. It actually simplifies his mind to think about that one thing. So I tell our guys, like, think about one thing, 1 or 2 things to like, that's your thought in the box. Right. And some of our guys, I say, okay, think about nothing then, like make that the thing.
Sure.
Nothing is the thing that I'm thinking about. And so it's,
that's really
I always find that pretty funny.
Yeah, no, and I, once you get through those layers of them trying to answer the questions they think that you want to hear, then it's like we can actually have real conversations.
Yes,
and you can get better, and that's where we want to go. Like it's getting through those layers of. It's no longer like me filling out the lineup type conversations. It's like, no, I want you to just own your career and give the best version of yourself, and then we can go from there. But I do actually have some different fall training videos. Again, we talked a little bit about 2 Strike Tuesday, and then I actually saw the chart. I don't want to get through without missing this. The chart that you guys are using to track swing decisions. Somebody on your staff posted that the other day, and so I'm going to try and go back and find that, and then I'll put that link in the show notes just so they can give you guys an idea. Like it's not just some big secret. I saw it on Twitter.
Yeah, no,
but it is
I'll
really
share
good.
anything I have. Like I said, there's no magic. I try to learn from everybody, so I'll talk hitting with anyone and everyone.
Oh, I love it. So let's start with this. Okay, so this is, I call it the Robbie Cano drill because this is kind of the first person that I remember doing this stuff. So tell us a little bit about what this is. So for the listeners on audio, you've got this very large screen that's about halfway splitting the plate. and it's got a
Mm-hmm.
huge net in the middle, and you're doing low flips on it. So I'm going to press play, and you can kind of explain the
Mm-hmm.
rest.
Yeah. So, and this is Chip calls this the K Long drill. Kevin Long is, he's obviously been a hitting coach in the big leagues for a long, long time. He worked with Jeter and Rendon and Soto and Trey Turner and all those guys. Schwarber had his career turnaround working with him. He's a really good dude and obviously a good coach. But I think he's the one who kind of got Cano to do this. And just to really simplify it, it keeps you connected, right? Like that's to oversimplify it. Stay connected when you swing, don't get disconnected. But I think in terms of like diving into it and some stuff I always say is just hold your line, like hold your line all the time. Away, middle, in, we're holding our line, we're moving it forward. And so you really have to kind of exaggerate it almost like a golf swing. And it really is, you have to create a good path doing this to lift it the right way. If you work around the ball, you're just going to snap, hook it, foul. So this is kind of and it's kind of a key. Probably do this once a week, once every couple of weeks with our whole team. It's part of our Path Pro.
I really like it. So if you're listening and you've ever used the term, stay inside the ball, this would probably be a good constraint to try and use within that. Because we talk about it. At least I've talked about it a lot.
An easy way to do this in the cages too is I'll take foam rollers and just put them over home plate, like the soft foam rollers.
Oh, nice. Yeah, great idea.
I think Early does this a variation of this with you guys like the pool floaties that stand up. There's a lot of different things you can do in the cage to really oversimplify it.
Yeah, he said they ruined one of the Tanner tees trying that. So he instead of ruining a $100 tee, he said, I now ruin $1 foam rollers.
Yes.
That's pretty good.
Yes. I got the foam roller, and there's been some snapped in half. The guys hit it, and it's like,
that's good.
Well, let's get the next one.
All right. So yeah, no doubt. So with this one, I love the different mats. So again, audio listeners, you've got like 3 different mats set up for like a 3 plate, and it's so the big home plate, like the ones that you put on home plate or in the cages that actually have the batter's box lines and the plates on them. I love those. But explain the drill here, because this looks like this is crazy here.
Well, this is just one of the 2-strike Tuesdays. Like, I was just feeling a little crazy. I try not to like really overly plan it out. I try to show up on Tuesdays and like, what's the meanest thing I could do to our team? And I know that sounds probably crazy, but it's real. Our guys are in there like hitting,
with rise right here.
This is
literally.
Yeah, and I can't remember if this was we were trying to replicate a submarine pitcher. That was kind of our thought behind it.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And so we did this one day with a fastball, another day with the slider. It's like I think Cooley posted that on Twitter too. Like, they showed a video, and then it was like a video of Tyler Rogers throwing a slider too. And
sick.
We've done it left-handed. We've done. I seriously just try to wake up and be really, really mean to them on Tuesdays and try to get them to embrace it, because it's like, it's going to be hard today, guys. Sorry.
Right.
Deal with it.
But at the same time, there's purpose behind it. Right. And so, when we're trying to hit, we're eventually, when we're in the box, we're trying to recall like this library of information that we've had from previous pitchers to be able to make predictions and better decisions. And so, unless you've literally seen like a submarine guy, then it's like, like that, there's doubt. Like, there is no doubt that there's doubt in your mind going, holy crap. Like, this is going to be tough. But it looks like, can I explain kind of what, for the audio listeners, it looks like there's an ATEC that's just sitting on the ground.
Yeah. We took the legs off of of a machine and just put it on the ground.
And sorry for interrupting, but what were you going to say?
No. Oh, well, I was going to say, like, we have a pretty good catcher. His name's Daniel Susak. So the first day we did this, he was getting so frustrated. He slams his bat down. He's like, I'm never going to face this. And so, like, the joke's been, like, he's going to face a submarine guy this year and hit a home run. And I'm going to say, like, we did this just for this at bat,
No doubt. Well, cool. Well, this next one, I love this one, by the way, because I think if, like you mentioned, I think we text about this, and you've got a BP
Mm-hmm.
thrower, you've got a curveball
Yeah.
machine set up right behind.
Yeah.
So I like, full disclosure, I really like the 2 machine, but like the way that people set it up, it's too far apart to really see both really well. But
Yeah.
you've got this actually synced up to where it's at the release point of the BP pitcher,
Mm-hmm.
and you're dropping it or not dropping it at the same time as the thrower. So it's coming
Yeah.
from the same window, which I really like it, but I'll play it and you
Yeah.
can explain it.
Yeah. So I'm about, I don't know, if maybe 5 feet ahead of the machine.
Okay.
And we try to do as best job as we can to where like my slot or whoever's throwing their slot is like right on with the machine. And the biggest key to this is having someone on the machine who is good at timing it, because there's an element, and like I tell our guys, like the difference between a fastball and a breaking ball in a game is probably 12 to 18 inches in terms of like where it's crossing the plate. So that's really small. And for whatever reason, like us as hitters, like it feels like it's a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say oftentimes like the biggest mistake that hitters make on breaking balls is they're late on them. It's because they see spin and their mind stops for that long, and that long is probably 2 feet. So it makes us late on them. So there is a larger element to that, but the whole point of this is really just to, one, I think is to make our move to 50-50, right? Like, and because we haven't even really talked about mechanics at all, which is I'm fine with.
You haven't, or we haven't?
We haven't. I'm saying like we haven't really even
Gotcha.
touched. I mean, just today we haven't really touched on like the mechanical aspects of it, but
sure.
Getting to a 50-50 position is something I really believe in. And so even if you can hold that for just a little bit longer, I think even if you exaggerate a little bit, and it's the same idea again, right? Of skill acquisition is a challenge in the brain. Like, we'll do this with guys who are working on swing adjustments. Like, at some point it's got to work on the field. So like, why not throw you in the fire right away? Like, if we're making an adjustment with the guy and he takes 1 or 2 good rounds off of BP or flips, I'm like, go to hit off the machine and then make it hard. It's got to work at some point.
Sure. No doubt. The next one we've got here is you've got, it looks like you're inside. So the video is kind of small, so I'm going to play it so you can explain it, and then I'll try and interpret it for the audio listeners.
Yep. So, and I'll actually touch on again, like, so we use 3-plate drill all the time. And I also like the visual because like I said, hold your line. So it gives them the actual visual of being able to maintain their hand path on the line of the batter's box. But this is just another one of our 2-strike Tuesdays. And so for the most part, most breaking balls are anywhere between 80 and 85, right-handed and left-handed. All fastballs have to be over 95 in terms of timing. So sometimes they're just closer. It's going to be hard. And so what we do here, and you can't really see it in this, but whoever's feeding the machine can turn the machine on and off whenever they want.
Oh, cool.
Without telling them. So,
so this is slider machine with the extended legs.
Yep, slider machine, extended legs. Try to have it at 6 feet, and 2 feet off. So 6 feet out, 6 feet up, and then 2 feet from center of the mound. It's just kind of your average extension release height in off center. That's kind of like our base that we work off of. And we'll move that around. And as we get into the season, in terms of like game planning, we'll actually make it the exact pitch release point. But for now, it's 6, 6, and 2. And just as often as we can create a challenging aspect, the more I think you're going to retain. And this is another staple. I think this is probably like 84, 85 mile an hour slider.
Sure. The one thing that that's tough, and it's a filthy slider. The one thing that I wanted to kind of hit on too, a couple things really, is with the 3-plate too. So the kids, kids want challenge. Like once they get over the fact of, hey, we're all like not looking great, and our coaches, like you have even said, we're not completely evaluating you off of your cage swings. Like it's all going to come out in the wash. If you're the best player on the field, like you're doing the right things off the field, you're going to play.
Yeah.
With this one too, like even with like 3-plate drill the other day, getting a little bit like, so we usually do 3-3-3 from back to front, and then we do 3-3-3 from front to back. Well, hitting a ton of foul balls, focus wasn't there. Then it was like, okay, you hit a foul ball, you're out. But for every swing that you put in play, then you moved up a plate or down. So we just called it around the world. It's like, how many times can you get around the world? But when we do that, I noticed the level of focus that was going up, and we're getting to the time of year where it's like, put up or shut up, guys. Like, we're getting into preseason mode. But when you talk about challenging, it doesn't have to be like failure rate at 90%. Like, a lot of these guys are hitting hardline drives, but it's enough to where it's a challenge for them without it being impossible. Do you agree or disagree with that?
No, I totally agree, and I would even take it further. Like, I'd rather err on the side of being too hard, and I know probably a lot of people would probably disagree with that. But I mean, I played, and I wasn't a great hitter, but I remember because I finished playing like right at the beginning of all this kind of new ideas about hitting and training and skill acquisition, and I hated the machine. Like, I was, I walked away. I was the guy who walked away from the machine, and so that's one thing I tell you, like, don't run from it, guys. Like that, you're going to be like me. You're going to be a 220 hitter. Like that's, I was always really good in flips and BP, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh, well, it's hard. No, I'm not very good anymore. And so,
sure,
what's the worst that's going to happen? The game's easier. Like, that's the way I kind of look at it.
Sure. That's great.
There's, we hit breaking balls every day. I don't ever want them to be scared of doing something hard. Embrace the failure, embrace the suck, and get better.
What is your balance of thrown baseballs versus balls out of the machine?
I would say Tuesdays for the most part is all machine, just because it's hard to really make it game-like by throwing it. The one thing we'll throw on Tuesdays is we'll do like, I'll get up really close, or Tyler will get up really close, and it's high fastballs, and then we'll do. You talk about 3-plate, like we do that a lot with 2 strikes, and I'll just say you can't take a swing on the same plate twice, so it adds an element of timing to it, right? It adds an element of just change of eye level, all those things. But I would say, and this kind of touches on like the bigger, broad picture, right? Like, we make one day really, really hard, and then for the other 5 days, like, I want them to drive the ball to the middle of the field. Yeah. So we're trying to balance that, right? Like,
sure,
one day is going to suck and it's going to be really, really hard. And then the other days, like, we're trying to drive, like, I call it 5 to 10. So left center is 405 or 410, right center is 405 at our place.
I love that.
Like 5 to 10, like, if we can stay between 5 and 10, like, we're going to be a really good team. And so I think that's where you kind of have that balance of, like, this would be dumb, I think, to do 2-strike Tuesday every day.
Yeah, it's too much.
So, yeah, and it's like, I don't want guys just to touch the ball.
Yeah,
but
that's a great point.
But I think if you make it a balance of, like, we're going to drive the ball for 5 days, and then another day, like, our first baseman is I'd put him up against anybody. I mean, talk about like 80 power, like 80 power. And I'm like, dude, if you can, like, just put the ball in play, you're going to hit more home runs. You have that much power. You're fortunate where, like, you can pop up and it's a home run. So, like, I even think stuff like this works for power guys. It's just simple math. Like, the more you put the ball in play, the better chance you have to get a hit.
Sure.
And then I think from there you practice driving the ball to the middle of the field, and then add an element to challenge. So for the rant. So to get back to your point, we're probably 60-40 machine to arm, I would say, just because that's where you're going to get your reps.
Sure. So we've got this last one here, and this is I can't tell.
This is opposite arm breaking ball. This is another kind of staple for us.
Okay.
And this might have been on 2-strike Tuesday or not. I don't know.
So almost the same setup of the settings, just flip the side from the last drill that we talked about.
Yeah,
And so
six
what's
six
like the
two.
intent? What's like the intent here? Like when you're talking about oppo curveballs, what are they trying to do with
Yeah,
this?
yeah. So the only rules we have on opposite arm breaking balls are no rollovers, like no pull side ground balls on opposite arm breaking balls. The only rule we have on same hand breaking balls is no oppo flares. So anything you do under that umbrella, like I'm totally good with. So if you take an opposite arm breaking ball and you hit 5 homers to the pull side, like awesome,
Mm-hmm.
good round, good job. Even if you flare 5 balls to the opposite side of the field, fine. Like the whole point of it is to not um, work around the ball, right? Like we're not trying to, as Doug would say, like hit through everything, hit through spin, right? The more we
Yeah, I
try to
love
beat the
that.
ball to a spot, the less adjustability we have. So if we're working around to try to get there, so I mean, I don't care if we're beat, but if we can still maintain our path and our swing, like I think you allow for a greater range of error, and really that's all we're really trying to do as hitters when we talk about mechanics, right? We're trying to give ourselves the most room for error that we can, and so however you do that, I think is how you have good mechanics.
Yeah, for sure. And so with this stuff too, what are conversations like when, because a lot of these guys, the videos that you took, they're hitting foul balls and they're
Mm-hmm.
inevitably gonna, they're using the environment to try and figure it out. But even us as good coaches, we need other good coaches to help us become better coaches. So we all need
Mm-hmm.
coaches. And so what are the conversations like whenever you're trying, and this is, again, there's so many layers to this question, but I'm just
Mm-hmm.
curious, can you give us an example of a conversation you had without, you don't have to name the player's name, but just a conversation you had with this stuff that's really hard and some of the different things that you tried or you fixed or what that conversation was like?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And that's been a challenge, honestly. I think the first couple weeks that I was here, we were here as a staff. Like I gotta believe that there were some guys who thought I was a little crazy. Like Tuesdays are really hard, and I can't overstate that. I think I sent you that video when we were getting ready, and it was like 87 mile an hour left-handed slider,
Oh, it's filthy.
and and guys get in there, and the first couple weeks it was like there was a lot of throwing helmets and slamming their bats down. And I'm like, you guys are gonna fail. Like that's okay. I don't even watch guys specifically. Like there's zero evaluation going on Tuesdays. It is you against the machine. Like that. Just don't strike out. That's it. Like I don't care if you stand on your head and you move the ball forward. Like then do that. So from an adjustment standpoint, like we don't talk about 2 strike approach. It's like I think you just learn that, and we have a lot of good athletes. So like be athletic and move the ball forward, and if something works, like some guys have gone to like split grip with 2 strikes because if they feel like they're shorter to the ball, and they just find that out on their by doing it, and I think those conversations happen organically because I think you said earlier, like the once you can get past like players telling you what they think you want to hear, then the real conversations start. And so it took some time to really get them to understand that, like, I wanted them to fail. I wanted them to do bad on Tuesdays, and it wasn't because I hated them. It was because I wanted them to fail on Tuesdays so they could succeed Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Like that was the whole point of it. And
Mm-hmm.
we were fortunate enough that when I was at Sac State, um, we worked with a company called The Program, and it was awesome. I'll probably get some of this wrong, but it was retired like special ops guys from the military, and hopefully Jamie watches this. And if I'm wrong, then you can hopefully give him a plug on the next one. But the program is unbelievable, and they came in and they're there for 2 days with your team, and they kind of go over your team with you, and there was such an element to that of like, what was the saying they always used? It's like, bleed in training so you don't bleed in war or whatever it is. And same goes in all sports, right? Like I think Gino Ariema does that with his women's team. Is like they'll play 6-on-5, and then once they get good at that, like they play 7-on-5 or 6-on-4. Like he He's like, I don't care. I make it hard on him. And I would say if you don't think he's a good coach, then you're wrong. Like that's arguably one of the greatest college coach who's ever done it in any sport. I mean, sorry, I'm ranting again, but there's just so many layers to that.
No, absolutely.
But
and
it's
from my experience too, being the new guy, it's being aware enough to be around and to pour into them without overdoing it, but also waiting for them to be ready for the feedback. And so sometimes I'll be like, hey, would you like some feedback with that? And they'll be like, no, like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I'm not going to take offense to that. It's your, it's your career. But eventually you plant the seed, like you're talking about, of being able to give them that feedback when they're ready for it. And I never miss an opportunity to coach, and sometimes they may not be ready for it. But at the same time, if it is a big change and it doesn't take just a verbal cue to be able to fix something, which I still use, and I don't see any problem with that, because sometimes it gets them where they need to and sometimes it doesn't. But at the same time, doing what you're talking about of letting them fail, and then them having that curiosity of why did I, and how could you help me through this and with this. I really like that.
And I think you kind of touched on it. I think the greatest, like the best year that I had in terms of like growth as a coach was I was the director of ops one year at Sac State. And so I wasn't allowed to coach. I could give my thoughts at the end of the day to our staff, but I couldn't say anything at practice. Where I think the first couple of years I coached, it was like, fix it right now, and then make it mechanics, right? Like, oh, they took a bad swing, like it must have been something mechanically wrong. And then I really I started taking notes at practice. Like I would take it on my phone and just like I would write down. So each day, like I started a new notes thing, and it was like, okay, this time I would have said this. And then I would go back at the end of practice and go over it, and I would decide if I would still say that after practice or not. And what I found is typically like the things that you want to say, only about 10% of them would be said at the end of practice. So was it really that important, right? Because for the most part, the things that you want to correct are the things that you don't think that they would know is a problem. Like I think anytime you're trying to correct something that players know is an issue and they know the answer, like you're just losing trust, or you're creating a divide. Now there's obviously times where you need to just reiterate it. But that's why coaches are needed, right? It's like teachers. Like, why would you, like, sometimes you just get it wrong. Sometimes you just don't perform well. Sometimes you just miss a fact. Like, I don't need to tell a guy, like, I tell this to our catchers all the time, like, they'll miss a block. And I remember when I was in college, I'd get yelled at. No, you got to block it. Well, like, thanks, man. No crap, I got to block it. Like, I actually wanted that runner to score from third with 2 outs that I had a pass ball on. And like, you don't need to tell me that. I got it. So I try not to overemphasize it. And, I think less is more. I'd rather undercoach than overcoach. And I'd rather have a guy with a bad swing who's a good hitter than have a guy with a great swing who's a bad hitter. And there's just, there's so many elements to being a coach. And I think the foundation to all that, like we talked about, the foundation to what I believe in as far as being a good hitter is being good with 2 strikes. I think the foundation to any relationship is trust. And, specifically on Tuesdays, it took some time for them to trust me. And I honestly think it took our first couple inter squads for them to really trust me. And, I think through our first 2 weekends, actually in the whole fall, we walked just as much as we struck out. And I think our guys were like, oh, this is working. There were guys who were career, 200 hitters with like a 230, 240 on base percentage with 2 strikes who like are hitting over 300 with 2 strikes in the fall. And
that's awesome.
So I think it took like results to see it, which I don't think is always the case, but I think Even just in any relationship, it's trust, because I don't care what you know until I know how much you care, right?
Sure.
That's the biggest thing. So just getting guys to really trust you, and I think to get guys to trust you, you have to trust them, and I think that's and especially being kind of a young coach, I'm not going to try to act and fake who I am. Um, I'm going to be real with them, but I'm going to be myself, and at the end of the day, I'm here to help them reach their goals, whatever that is, whether that's baseball or life. But I think once they see that you care and you're there for them, I think oftentimes, um, this is more of like that social media thing. I hear coaches complain about, how things are now,
Hmm.
but on the flip side, like I see all these coaches like post what they're doing on social media like all the time, and then they give their 2 cents on every little,
Sure.
like, oh, this is how you coach this situation. I'm like, well, I think when players see a coach trying to progress his career, like that's a coach being selfish. When players see a coach trying to help progress each individual's career and their teams, putting the team first, like that's when it's good. And I think that's one of those issues with that dynamic of player and coach now, is because with social media, there's so much individualism now, and with this whole name, image, likeness, it's creating that more and more for the players, and coaches complain about it at times, of not being not about the team. It's, you see the same thing with coaches too, right? And so, um, just I think developing that trust, and really driving home the fact, like, I'm here to help you, and you get better to be whether it's you want to be a big leaguer or you want to be a doctor or whatever. I want to help you in any way that I can.
No, really, really good. And it's so good. And we kids notice what we post all the time. And I think
Hmm.
really with teenagers too, and early 20s, even like anybody under 30 is really
Hmm.
attuned to if you're authentic
Yeah.
and real. Like I really think
Yep.
because they have so many friends and so many people that they're around all the time that are not. So they
Yep.
can tell that with us too.
Hmm.
And so I
No,
want
you're
to
never gonna fool the players.
no. No.
They see right through you.
Absolutely.